Hi, everybody. Today we are going to begin our new unit. We're going to start talking about energy and enzymes. So as you can see here, it's part 1 of energy and enzymes. So let's take a look at what this means. Now, energy is really important for living things. All living things have to utilize energy. So what exactly is energy? Let's start there. Well, energy is going to be the capacity to do work. So in biology, we're talking about synthesizing molecules, so making molecules. We also might be talking about moving objects, so animals may have to move things sometimes, generating heat, generating light. All of these things represent energy. When we talk about energy, we are mainly talking about 2 types. There's kinetic energy, which is the energy of movement, and then there is potential energy, which is like stored energy, energy that is being or has been stored. Potential energy under the right conditions can be transformed into kinetic and vice versa. So the laws of thermodynamics describe basic properties of energy. So as we are going to learn, potential energy in biology is mostly found as chemical bonds. That term right there is going to be important. Chemical bonds house energy. So if you remember glucose was a hexagon-shaped molecule that had all these carbons where we had all these different angles in the glucose molecule, and the bonds between the carbons, so those lines, that is where energy is stored, and that is potential energy. Sometimes we refer to this as chemical potential energy, or CPE for short. And this chemical potential energy can be used to make cellular energy, which is going to be ATP, and we'll learn more about ATP later. ATP is the molecule of energy in all living things. All right, this energy in the form of ATP can then be converted into kinetic, which is used to do work. So we see that happening with the cheetah in the picture. We've got, right, the cheetah is eating chemical energy here, right, because the cheetah is eating food. So the food is the chemical energy. And then the cheetah can then convert that chemical energy into ATP, and ATP can cause the muscles to contract, which will allow the cheetah to run. And then we can see releasing CO2 in water as it runs. All right. So how does energy affect living things? Well, all living things are built on chemical reactions. Chemical reactions are causing everything that happens in a plant cell, in a bacterial cell, in an animal cell. Everything that goes on is due to chemical reactions. And those chemical reactions, most of the time, are transforming energy from one thing into another thing, right? So transformation that is happening. And one very common transformation is taking the sun's energy and turning it into sugars, help build plants. And then we have another transformation. So this giraffe is then going to eat the energy being stored in the plant. So notice what's going on here. The energy from the sun is being transferred to chemical energy in the plant. The chemical energy in the plant is being converted into chemical energy in the giraffe. So the organic molecules that make up the giraffe. Then the organic molecules that make up the giraffe are being transformed into the organic molecules and energy that is needed for the lion. So energy transfers are common in all living things. All right, metabolism represents the chemical reactions that deal with energy in living things. So metabolism just kind of represents those chemical reactions that especially deal with energy. So some of these chemical reactions in living things are going to form bonds between molecules, and we already know a lot about this. Dehydration synthesis reactions, also sometimes just referred to as synthesis reactions, are forming bonds, making things bigger. We refer to bonds that make things bigger, make molecules bigger. The reactions that drive that are anabolic reactions. right? I like to think, if you've heard of anabolic steroids, which an athlete might take to make bigger muscles, anabolic reactions are building bigger molecules. All right, that's why they're anabolic steroids, as our penguin is reminding us. And then we have reactions that break bonds between molecules, like hydrolysis reactions. Again, this is review. Hydrolysis reactions are breaking or digesting reactions. And these are catabolic reactions. I like to think about a cat swiping something off of a table and breaking things down. So anabolic reactions and catabolic reactions. So here's an example of dehydration synthesis. So dehydration synthesis, we have two monomers. Those monomers are going to remove water in order to join together. And then we have hydrolysis reactions or breaking reactions, where we have a polymer and we're going to insert water in order to break that polymer up. And of course, we also already know, this is review again, that enzymes are going to help these reactions happen, whether they are synthesis or digestion reactions, whether they are anabolic or catabolic, right? This top one is anabolic, the bottom one is catabolic. Whether they're breaking or building reactions, enzymes help those happen. Okay, here's more examples. Dehydration synthesis, two monomers, 1, 2, becoming one polymer. And a hydrolysis reaction is the opposite. We have one polymer becoming two monomers. And there are the enzymes making those reactions happen, right? The enzymes are either forcing these bonds together or they are bending them so that the bond can more easily break. Okay, like everything else in the universe, living things and the cells that make them up must abide by the laws of thermodynamics. The laws of thermodynamics define basic properties and behavior of energy. So the laws of thermodynamics are governing living things. Let's take a look at them. There's two that we're going to go over. The first law of thermodynamics states that the total amount of energy before a transformation equals the total amount of energy after a transformation. Here's the important point. No new energy is created and no energy is lost. We cannot make energy go away. We cannot invent new energy out of thin air. It can only be transformed. And the picture on top is showing us that. We have the energy before, and then it's transformed. So notice about half of the energy is different, but it's still there. It's just in a different form. It may have turned from glucose to ATP. It might have turned from ATP into heat. It could have turned from kinetic energy into potential energy. Any of these transformations is possible. The total amount is equal. So if we started with 100 joules of energy, we are left with 100 of joules of energy at the end. The second law of thermodynamics states that although a transformation does not change the total amount of energy, after any transformation, the amount of available energy to do work is always less. So what does this mean? Let's look at the picture to figure it out. We have an energy transformation before and then after. And notice what happened is that a lot of that energy was lost. How was it lost? Probably due to heat. It's not the only way energy can be lost, but it's a common way. So anytime we have an energy transformation, some of that energy is lost. Now, it doesn't disappear, right? It's still there. It's just in a form that we can't use. So we really can't use heat. Body heat, for example, is not something we use for energy in our own bodies. So the amount of usable energy is less. So the amount of total energy, still the same. Some of it we just can't use. And then as we look at the bottom picture is showing us that over time, the amount of usable energy goes down and down and down until we are left with very little or no usable energy. All right. So this leads us to what we call entropy, which we'll be talking about in a minute. Okay, let's take a look at a food web. We have energy in plants, so that's chemical potential energy, and that energy is moving up to the grasshopper. So the grasshopper is eating the plant, and this vole or mouse is eating the grasshopper, so the energy is transformed again. Then we have a hawk that's eating the mouse. So once again, we have another energy transfer. All right, from plant cells to animal cells. Now, what's happening is as we have these energy transfers, we also have losses of energy. And that could be energy that is lost in waste, like feces. It could be energy that's lost as heat. It could be energy lost as parts of undigestible or uneaten material. All of that are ways, those are ways where energy can be lost from the food chain. So living cells unavoidably convert forms of usable energy into heat that is lost from the system. The loss of usable energy um, during each energy transfer basically will make the universe more disordered. It will make the universe less ordered. Scientists use a quantity called entropy as a measure of disorder or randomness. The more randomly arranged a collection of matter is, the greater the entropy. Okay, so we're going to watch this later, so we'll skip this for now. So let's think about what we mean by disorder. So here we have an orderly biologic molecule. And the analogy for this is a pool setup that is how it should be. It's orderly, right? But this can change, right? If we take the cue and we hit the pool balls and they start going everywhere, right, we create disorder on the pool table. That is entropy. So we have a low level of entropy when everything is ordered very nicely, and we have a high level of entropy when everything is disordered. I like to think about entropy like a room getting messier. If you do nothing over time, your room is going to get messier and messier and more disordered. So over time, you are going to have a high level of entropy, right? And that takes no work on your part. That just happens normally. But if you want to decrease the entropy in your room, if you want to make your room cleaner, you have to put in work to make that order happen. Cells create ordered structures from less ordered material. Just like you cleaning your room, cells have to take disorder and they need to build it up into something that contains more order. Living things on Earth use a continuous input of solar energy to synthesize complex molecules. What organisms do this? So you probably guessed plants. If you did, you would be correct. Plants take disordered energy and they turn it into starch and cellulose. Both of these things are highly ordered, so they are decreasing entropy. Organisms also replace ordered forms of matter and energy with less ordered forms as we metabolize them. So when we eat food, food is highly ordered. When we eat it, we turn it into carbon dioxide, we turn it into water, and we turn it into heat. These are disordered. So when we break down food, we are creating more disorder. Energy flows into an ecosystem in the form of light and exits in the form of heat. All right, so here we have a comparison between order and disorder. Let's take a look at the left-hand column. So on the left-hand column, we have glucose. Glucose is a fairly large molecule, so that is ordered, right? So we have a low entropy with glucose. It's organized. Notice how there is lots of potential energy there. There's lots of bonds there that we can get energy from, and it's not particularly stable, right? Glucose is going to break down at some point. And now look at what's on the right. We have what glucose turns into after we break it up. Carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide and water are smaller and they are less ordered. And that means they have more entropy. right? Because they're smaller, they've been broken down, we've increased entropy. These molecules are less organized because of their size. They have less potential energy. We don't really get much energy from CO2 and water. And importantly, they are more stable. So they are more stable basically because they have less potential energy. So these things are more likely not to change. Glucose is likely to break down because of that potential energy, because of that organization, because it is not very stable. It's more likely to break down. And these disordered carbon dioxide and water molecules are more stable because they don't have as much potential energy. Right? Okay. Then we have on the bottom the channel protein. So take a look at what's going on. The channel protein has hydrogen ions only on one side of the membrane. That is highly ordered, just like you cleaning your room. Getting all of those molecules took a lot of work. It is organized. There is potential energy, as we know from our last unit there, and we have a very unstable situation. Why is it unstable? It's unstable because those molecules want to diffuse across that membrane, so it's not particularly stable. Then we have the less ordered version. Eventually, those molecules do diffuse across the membrane, and that means it is less organized. It's less organized, and it has less potential energy, and it is more stable, right? Because it has reached equilibrium, there's more stability there. So there's a high level of entropy with the picture on the right. All right. So the evolution of more complex organisms does not violate the second law of thermodynamics. And the reason why is because even though we are decreasing entropy in the organism, when we do that, we increase the universe's total entropy. So in order to build things up, things become more disordered later on. And we are going to stop there for now, and we're going to continue with this later. So we're going to stop with that thought, and we're going to continue with it. If you have any questions, please let me know, and look for part 2.